These are not things that pregnant women do. And when you're pregnant, there's not a pillow under your skirt.
I need to ask you about Doria's ingestion of while she was pregnant with Meghan.
Okay, pregnant. You don't drink when you are pregnant.
So rumors have been floating around for a while now about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry possibly using a surrogate. Most people brushed it off as just another wild theory. But now, things just got real. Reports claim that the royal palace has finally come forward with actual proof, suggesting that Meghan and Harry didn't conceive their children naturally.
Delivery certificates, and I heard stories early on around the time Archie was allegedly in utero and being born. I heard stories that royal staffers were not allowed to see or touch her abdomen.
If that's true, it's raising a ton of questions, like how exactly were Archie and Lilibet born? If Meghan didn't carry them, then who did? And where's that woman now? Why has she never come forward? Was she legally silenced or kept hidden for some reason?
The idea that a royal physician was not allowed to examine her womb. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but if I were pregnant with a royal child, you would want that child in the best care of the best medical practitioners.
It's a lot to take in, and honestly, it just makes everything feel even more mysterious. Because if this part of their story was kept under wraps for this long, what else don't we know? When Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was born, people expected Meghan Markle and Prince Harry to follow the usual royal playbook, just like the royals before them.
Sort of an explanation of Meghan just likes to play games with the media, wants to come out on top. And of course, the people who end up suffering the most, I think, are her own children in that.
You know, smile for the cameras, pose outside the hospital with the newborn, let the world share in the joy. But nope, they went in a completely different direction. And honestly, it just sparked more questions than answers. That's really when the drama began. See, when Meghan first announced her pregnancy, the public was genuinely happy for them. It was supposed to be a feel-good moment. But from the very start, the way Meghan and Harry handled everything was, well, kinda strange. Confusing at best, suspicious at worst. Normally, here's how it goes. The palace announces when labor begins, then shares the news once the baby arrives, followed by the iconic photo op, like when Kate Middleton stepped out of the Lindo wing looking flawless just hours after giving birth. It's a royal tradition. But with Archie, Meghan and Harry skipped all of that. No labor announcement, no timely update. And get this, they waited over 8 hours after Archie was born to even let the public know he existed. What's more, they released a statement claiming Meghan was in labor even though the baby had already been born. So why lie? Naturally, that set off alarm bells. People started wondering if it was just a PR fumble or were there more skeletons in the closet. Things took an even stranger turn when Meghan started sharing photos of herself during her so-called pregnancy. At first glance, they seemed like your typical maternity shots. But the more people looked, the weirder it all got. In nearly every picture, her baby bump looked completely different. Sometimes high, sometimes low, sometimes oddly shaped. It didn't take long for internet sleuths and eagle-eyed fans to start raising eyebrows. People began to suspect that what she was showing off wasn't a baby bump at all, but possibly a cushion or some sort of fake belly. And those carefully curated photos she posted, many believe they were heavily edited or even photoshopped, all to convince the world that she was actually pregnant and gave birth to her child. But the inconsistencies in those pictures told a very different story. The more you dig, the more it feels like something isn't adding up. And for a couple that stepped away from the royal family for privacy, they sure left behind a trail of very public confusion.
I will say that, like a lot of people, I saw the Getty images of the pillow dropping behind the skirt, and I thought at first they could be photoshopped, but Getty Images is very reliable.
That's when people really started talking, especially about one rumor that just wouldn't go away. Some believed Meghan didn't actually give birth herself, and that a surrogate was used instead. Now, is there solid proof? Not really. But when the timeline feels off and the media keeps getting confusing messages, it's only natural for people to start connecting the dots on their own. The confusion didn't stop with the birth news either. Meghan and Harry didn't show Archie to the public right after he was born, like other royals usually do. Instead of stepping outside the hospital for photos, they waited 2 days and had a private photo shoot inside Windsor Castle. Only one reporter was allowed, and the whole thing was carefully planned. There were no genuine moments or public excitement, just a quiet, controlled setup. Maybe they wanted to keep things private, and that's fair. But compared to how Prince William and Kate handled their children's births, with open updates and public appearances, this just felt different. It made Meghan and Harry seem like they were trying to hide something. When trust starts to fade, even small things begin to look suspicious, like Archie's birth certificate. When it finally came out, people noticed it didn't have the usual doctor signatures royal births normally have. Then came another surprise. A few weeks later, Meghan's full name was removed from the document and replaced with only her royal title. That change left people even more confused and raised a lot of new questions. But that wasn't the end of it. Things really started to heat up when voices from inside royal circles began speaking out. Royal author Lady Colin Campbell, known for her no-nonsense opinions, has been one of the loudest critics when it comes to Harry and Meghan's lack of transparency. She didn't hold back, saying, "I think the whole thing stinks to high heaven." Campbell has been urging the couple to stop the guessing game and finally clear the air about the children's births. Meghan has created a situation that has caused people to believe the children were born by surrogacy. Clear it up once and for all. There should be no mystery as to who is legitimately in the line of succession. And then came more voices, this time from Meghan's own estranged family, stirring the pot even further. Her half-sister, Samantha Markle, recently shared some eyebrow-raising claims during an interview with journalist Dan Wooten. Referring to their father, she said, "My father said 9 months before Archie was allegedly born that Meghan picked up her frozen eggs. I thought, that makes sense, there would be a surrogate involved. But why the secrecy?" Samantha didn't stop there. She went on to say that if a surrogate was used, it could mean Archie and Lilibet aren't technically in line for the throne, as royal heirs are expected to be born to a titled royal mother. She also voiced her frustration over how everything's been handled, adding, "If they used a surrogate, admit it. Instead of lying to the world, just say we're using a surrogate." Things got even more intensified when, at first, it was said that Meghan planned to give birth at home in Frogmore Cottage. But later reports revealed that Archie was actually born at Portland Hospital in London, which is about 20 miles away. That sudden change and the secrecy around it only deepened the public's suspicion about how everything really went down. To make things even murkier, the official announcement that Meghan was in labor came 7 hours after Archie had already been born. Then in Prince Harry's memoir, Spare, he claimed that they were back at Frogmore Cottage just 2 hours after the birth. That detail raised a lot of eyebrows. As one palace insider pointed out, how many women give birth and are at home in 2 hours? That didn't make sense unless Meghan didn't deliver the child herself. And it wasn't just Archie's birth that sparked speculation. Lilibet's arrival in June 2021 came with just as many questions. She was born at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital after the couple had settled into their $14 million Montecito home. But even then, the couple kept things extremely private, which only added fuel to the fire. Their reluctance to be open with the public has led to even more theories. Royal author Lady Colin Campbell is now pushing for full transparency, demanding absolute proof that Meghan gave birth to both children.
She also clutched her belly at all times, which of course have ensured that nobody could touch her stomach or feel what was going on behind the hands that were shielding the belly. So if anybody had...
All this pressure on the royal palace regarding Prince Harry and Meghan is reportedly putting serious strain on Meghan and Harry's marriage. According to a palace insider, Meghan is furious about the non-stop allegations and is especially upset over Campbell's recent statements. The source added, "I can imagine her reaction, venting her anger and frustration over Lady C, threatening to sue and blaming Harry for not doing enough to protect their privacy." The source didn't hold back when describing the situation, saying, "This scandal will stretch their marriage to the limit. It's already hanging by a thread." What really made things spiral out of control wasn't just the secrecy, it was how Meghan and Harry handled things once the questions started pouring in. Instead of clearing the air or offering any kind of explanation, they seemed to lean into the confusion. The press statements that didn't add up, they never addressed them. The delay in the announcements, never explained. Their go-to answer was always the same vague reasoning, privacy. But that word privacy didn't calm the public down. If anything, it made people even more curious. Then came the infamous Oprah interview.
Meghan trashed them from a great height on Oprah Winfrey and the Netflix series.
Meghan never directly said there was a conspiracy, but the way she told the story, especially around Archie not receiving a royal title, definitely hinted at something darker going on behind the scenes. She suggested race played a role, implying that Archie was denied a title because of his mixed background. That claim hit hard. It dominated headlines and sent royal watchers into a frenzy. But here's the thing. According to long-standing royal tradition, only the grandchildren of the reigning monarch automatically receive titles like prince or princess. At the time, Archie was Queen Elizabeth's great-grandchild, not grandchild. Unless the monarch makes an exception, he wasn't eligible for the title yet. Still, the idea that Archie was excluded because of racism stuck, and Harry and Meghan never stepped in to correct the misunderstanding. They let it linger, knowing full well how explosive that narrative could be. They positioned themselves as victims of an outdated, unfair institution, and maybe that would have landed differently if the lead-up to the moment wasn't already packed with strange choices, inconsistencies, and unanswered questions. One more thing that raised eyebrows: Archie's birth certificate. First, its release was delayed. Then when it finally came out, people noticed something odd. There were no doctor signatures. It might sound like a small detail, but for royal births, it's not. Every royal baby certificate before Archie's had those signatures. It was a form of tradition, a stamp of legitimacy confirming the birth details. The fact that Archie's certificate didn't have that, especially with all the swirling rumors, just gave skeptics more reason to question everything. What really set things off wasn't just the secrecy, it was how Meghan and Harry responded once people started asking questions. Instead of calming the rumors with facts or a clear explanation, they seemed to dig deeper into the confusion. They never addressed the odd press releases, never explained the delay in the announcements, and never offered any honest reasoning behind their decisions. Instead, they just kept using privacy as a blanket excuse, like that one word was supposed to answer everything. But that just made the public more curious. And then came the Oprah interview. Meghan didn't say there was a conspiracy outright, but the way she told her story, especially about Archie not getting a royal title, definitely made it sound like there was something shady happening behind closed doors. She implied race was a factor and that Archie was denied a title because of it. That claim made headlines immediately. It hit a nerve and sent royal watchers into a frenzy. But the truth is, royal protocol has always stated that only the monarch's grandchildren automatically get titles like prince or princess, unless the reigning monarch grants an exception. At the time, Archie was Queen Elizabeth's great-grandchild, so technically he wasn't entitled to that title yet. Still, the damage was done. The public latched onto the racism claim, and Harry and Meghan never corrected it. They let that version of the story sit, knowing exactly the kind of reaction it would trigger. They painted themselves as victims of a cold, outdated system, and maybe that would have been more believable if the timeline leading up to the moment wasn't already full of strange decisions, unclear statements, and inconsistencies. Even Archie's actual birth time became a point of confusion. Some sources reported he was born at 2:26 a.m., while others claimed it was at 5:26 a.m. You'd think something as basic as a birth time would be consistent, especially for a royal baby, but no one seemed to agree on the details.
I was seeing all of these pictures of this alleged moon bump and pillows dropping underneath the skirt and hoses hanging out of the skirt, and heard about the Mayhew Clinic and saw pictures of her bending down allegedly at 8 months with her knees all the way to her chest in high heels. Now, I don't know.
That, along with the misleading press updates and constantly shifting narratives, made it feel like the whole thing was more of a PR production than a genuine celebration. By the time Meghan and Harry did the big reveal, posing with Archie inside Windsor Castle, the trust had already started to crumble. The setting felt stiff, overly staged, and cold. One reporter was allowed in, and Archie was swaddled so tightly the public barely got a glimpse of him. It didn't feel joyful or spontaneous, it felt like damage control. As time went on, the criticism grew louder. People weren't just confused anymore, they were frustrated. Meghan and Harry had so many chances to explain things, to move forward, or at least stop fueling the rumors. But instead, they kept circling back to bringing up the same issues in new ways, repeating the same talking points, and with every new interview or project, reopening old wounds. The Netflix series was another example. Once again, they brought up the media pressure, the racism, the lack of support from the institution. But the tone was sharp, pointed, like they were carefully shaping their image as misunderstood victims. And the more they told their story, the more inconsistency started to show. Timelines didn't match up, details shifted, and rather than gaining more sympathy, it all started to feel off. One particularly odd moment was Meghan's take on the royal baby photo tradition. In interviews, she said no one ever asked if she wanted to take part in it, suggesting that she was excluded or ignored. But according to insiders, that's simply not true. Apparently, Meghan had already made it clear she didn't want to participate. The palace was waiting on her decision, not forcing her into anything. So when she framed it as another moment of mistreatment, it rubbed people the wrong way. Then came the royal title debate. Meghan claimed Archie was denied the title of prince because of his race and status. But according to long-standing royal rules, he wasn't supposed to get that title until King Charles took the throne. The Queen had made a special exception for William's kids, but Meghan and Harry never formally requested one. Instead, they used the moment to strengthen their narrative of being pushed aside. When people began noticing that manipulation, the trust eroded even more. What could have been a personal decision to do things differently ended up looking like a carefully crafted media strategy, one that backfired. Every delayed update, every change to official documents, every vague response added to the growing pile of doubts. And of course, the surrogacy rumors never really went away. Between the unexplained delay in birth announcements, the unclear medical records, the overly polished public appearances, and the missing details, it all started to look like something was being hidden. Even if that's not the case, Meghan could have put the rumors to rest with just a little transparency. But instead, she either stayed quiet or brushed it all off, and people took that silence as confirmation. The saddest part, this whole storm could have been avoided if they had just been upfront from the start, whatever the truth may be. They didn't need to follow every royal rule, they just needed to be honest. But by trying to control the story, spinning their image, and shifting facts to fit their narrative, Meghan and Harry turned what should have been one of the happiest times in their lives into a never-ending PR mess. And now, no matter how much time passes, that cloud still lingers over Archie's birth. People are still wondering what really happened behind the scenes, and probably always will.